welcome back to the Nerdy Neighborhood Neighbors, and welcome back to your Friendly Neighborhood Comic Show. I'm your host, Lauren, your Friendly Neighborhood Bi, and I'm here today with up-and-coming indie comic creator Michael McCarthy, who actually has a book coming out from Scout Comics very soon, called Miracle Kingdom. How are you, Michael?
I am great. Thank you so much for welcoming me into the nerdy neighborhood. Glad to hang out on today and just chill and talk comics. And in particular, my debut as a comic book writer. So it's really cool. I'm really excited, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always, honestly, for me, such an honor when people that are, it's their first comic book or they're just starting out. And I know it can be hard doing interviews and things like that, and even just hard getting your book out and seeing the response. So it's kind of tricky, picking where you interview and how you handle them. So I'm honored that you were excited to come on here. It's always such a joy to get people that are kind of brand new to the industry too, because then we get to see you grow, from where you are today, and God knows where you'll be 5-10 years down the road, should you, choose to pursue the comics industry further. Like it's just so cool. So happy to have you here. Miracle Kingdom, you sent me the first couple issues, and just for those you guys watching this interview today, we are going to go into some spoilers for this series today from Scout Comics because it's just so good. And, Michael here was very passionate about, let's just get into the spoilers. Let's talk about what makes this book so interesting for everybody. So we are going to go spoilers. So if you're not into that, we'll talk basic stuff for the first couple minutes, but then maybe 5 or 10 minutes from now, maybe, cut the listening till the very end where we wrap it up. But Michael, so this is coming from Scout Comics, and Scout Comics, I really love. They're a really growing indie publisher. They're quickly, in my opinion, becoming one of the bigger names, if you will. How did you get connected with Scout to, get this book, out there to people?
So I first heard about Scout when the CEO, Brendan Deneen, started it. He used to work at as a scout, as a book scout for a studio, and I worked at that time at a talent agency, and it was just sort of I guess kismet, because he created his first comic himself and then started a company out of it. We didn't deal with each other too much, just years ago, but I kind of in the background watched how Scout became bigger and bigger, and I was always fascinated with it. And then when it came time for me to write my first story, they were naturally at the top of the list, just because I was just so amazed that Brendan was able to build that company from the ground up. And I've checked out their titles, and they're really cool, and I thought that would be a good fit. So I, for sure, as soon as I had my pitch and everything ready to go, I submitted to them.
That's awesome. So they were the main people you reached out to, and it sounds like you were, it just worked out. You pitched to them and they accepted it one way or the other, which you don't see happen a lot in the industry. So that's really awesome for you.
Yeah, they were my first and foremost pitch, and I sent it in, and a week later, they read it really fast, and a week later or so, I heard back. So that's awesome. It was really cool, yeah. And I was, thrilled to team up with them. So, because I just felt like they would be a good home for something that's, a bit, playful, tongue-in-cheek story that Miracle Kingdom is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm gonna put the cover for the first issue on screen here. I really loved this. The first 3 issues you gave me, and you do such a great job of naturally building the story up. Because I think sometimes some stories, they reveal too much about the characters too quickly, they reveal the plot too quickly, they build the world up too fast, all these different things. But Miracle Kingdom, I think you do such a good job of making sure it builds upon itself very naturally, and so that's kind of easy for the reader to follow without guessing everything, I guess.
Thank you. Well, to give credit where credit's due, Charlie Stickney, who was the editor overseeing this first issue, initially, when he was at Scout, he was the one who sort of suggested that direction. So he really wanted to bring in some of the mysterious elements of Winston, the character here, and kind of have the first issue be a mystery unto itself, and then reveal sort of the bigger concept at the very end of the first issue. So credit to Charlie for that direction, and you know, allowing me to take the time to get into the story in this way, rather, because the initial script started out with the full-blown concept, and you know, Charlie had some interesting and very smart comments about that to sort of refold the direction of the story. And so yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because that was something that he contributed immensely and helped give this story its pace and feel.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, Charlie, he's awesome. I mean, he does so much of his own work, and then he's such a big influence and big what's the word? I guess I'll say advocate, for the indie comics community in general, and creators, it seems like. So it's really cool to hear that he gave you that helpful feedback. Because I definitely think it shows.
He's a smart storyteller. So
yes,
I anyone who comes in contact with a smart storyteller is going to benefit.
Yes.
So.
Yes, absolutely.
He was very generous with his time to read and review and sort of brainstorm with me how to get this first issue moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this first issue, again, it really sets up the plot. You've got our main character, Winston, who we learn is an accountant through this mother who's trying to find him at the start of the issue. And essentially she does end up finding him. And, he's kind of, he's definitely quirky, but like in a very like kind and endearing way, not in like a like flamboyant or even creepy way. And she meets him and she's like, hey, I need your help. Like, we've got this guy who's trying to run what's essentially a cult, and try to give miracles out. And the mom, her son Paulo, thinks he can walk again, and that, he's had a miracle performed on him. And she's like, this guy that's done this to my son is a fraud. I need your help. So, kind of starts off as like this general, like, oh, let me like, this person's in need of help. Winston, is going to be convinced to help do that. But by the end of this issue, there's a really fun twist that I enjoyed, where you kind of get the hints of these like supernatural elements coming into play, and then you get this big light towards the end, and he like vanishes. And by the second issue, we realize that like he's gone to heaven, and that he's an angel. Like, so it's gone from like, oh, this is a nice like normal people's story, I guess, to oh my gosh, this is freaking humongous. We're gonna go into like miracles and further spiritual stuff. Where did that general jump come from in terms of your storytelling with, you could have easily made this a general, not supernatural story, but you took it to that level.
Well, it started off as a supernatural story that starts off in heaven and does all this world building. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it was Charlie who suggested that the story needed some other dynamics. And then I invented the whole plot of the mother and the son was sort of backloaded into the story. And I formulated the first issue to be centered around that plot. But that didn't initially exist in my first pitch to Scout. So that kind of came like after the fact. So it initially was about, everything was totally different in the first issue after I reworked that, because in the original script, the reader knows right away that Winston is an angel and he's an accountant in heaven. And we introduced that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then when he goes down to the church to investigate this shady televangelist, that whole interchange has a different tonality because the reader knows who Winston is and what he's up to. And then when I flipped this around and had the reader not be aware of Winston's identity, I had to sort of play, trying to keep the exchange that it happens in this comic similar, but not reveal it until the very last page. So it was an interesting writing process to play with that element and to keep everything smoldering and brewing and the mystery interesting, and then to keep the sort of the tongue-in-cheek feel that I wanted it to have when I set out writing the issue. So that's Winston in his office, sort of finishing up a another job, and he's packing up and ready to go back to his home office, which at this point we don't know it's in heaven, but he's only visiting Earth to wrap up another detective story that he was involved with.
Yeah.
And and in the foreground is Alma, the mother, who is desperately seeking help.
Yeah, absolutely. With the plot and everything, did you, and I know creators get asked kind of similar questions to this, but I am still interested in terms of, like, did you have any specific thing that like influenced you wanting to tell a story regarding, like, false healers and miracle workers and things like that? Was there anything personal there, or you were just really fascinated by telling that?
Honestly, that angle just sort of was random. I just always felt like, it might have come from some of my, the heavy metal music that I listened to growing up, where they would talk about like the faith healers and televangelists back in the 80s that were famous and
Yeah.
infamous. And so maybe in the back of my mind, like, a story about them would be interesting. But, full disclosure, I work at an entertainment law office. And one of the things I do is I work with accountants and auditors all the time in auditing studios for our clients' pictures. And so one day when I was like, working on files and everything like that, I just sort of like was thinking about, what I do and like how that might translate into a story, and connecting that with another element, which is my wife, who has this silly habit of always praying for meaningless things. And it always amused me that we would be coming home from, we live in a very crowded neighborhood, and we would always be fighting for parking, but my wife would always pray for a parking space. And sure enough, when we get home, there'd be the perfect parking space always waiting for her. It was divine or something. But so I said to her one time, I said, one time you're going to pray and you're going to need a miracle. You're going to need something life changing and important. And God's going to look down on you. He's going to say, oh, I can't help you there. But, remember all those great parking spaces I gave you. So that sort of planted the idea that what if prayer was a quantifiable and measurable thing? And and so that's where, so I kind of like played with that, and that intrigued me. And then to get back to your original question, I always thought, like, when it came to the sort of the televangelist character, the thing that would probably scare him the most would be a well-meaning accountant ready to audit his books. I always thought that was like a very playful interchange that two character types could have.
Yeah, no, and I love that you brought up the player is quantifiable. I definitely want to go back to talking about, this faith healer that Winston is investigating. Both the quantifiable prayer that definitely interested me in terms of, like, when he's doing an audit and explaining how it works. And basically how, it's not that you ever completely run out of prayer as long as you still do good faith, do good acts, things like that. You can basically recharge it. But kind of like you said, like, what if, you do all these little prayers and you're doing great, but then you've only got like 10% prayer left and you need an 80% miracle. Well, unless you can somehow build up that extra 70% in an hour or however much time you need that miracle, it's kind of done. And does, making prayer quantifiable, like, does it invalidate, the authenticity of prayer? And I haven't seen that conversation yet in the series, and it may not even get to that point, but I think it's really cool that you're looking at all these different viewpoints of it, and also kind of like the bureaucracy of heaven. Really, I really enjoyed seeing that. He's Winston, he was trying to do all the right things. He's investigating every aspect of it, every perspective of this case. And he keeps being stumped because, like, one of the things is, he's checking around. He's, the son, Paulo, he's supposed to be in a wheelchair, but the thing is, he's walking.
Right.
And if his thing is actually incurable and the miracle didn't work, he technically, logically shouldn't be able to do that, right? So he's investigating how all these things happen, and kind of by the third issue, the second I feel like as a reader, I'm like, I'm going to figure out what's going on. There's another curveball that's thrown. And I'm like, what, how do we get past that? Like, what is happening? What how did you create this villain that we currently see, at least, not ones we don't know about yet, and where, how did you decide the perspective to take on him, whether he was going to be a supernatural villain or just some low life human?
So we're talking about Lester Benny,
Yes.
right? Which
Yep.
I was, for me, just has a very showman sound to the name, and yeah, Lester Benny is sort of a larger than life faith healer, and I gave him a Texas drawl, but put him in San Francisco. So uh, there's a story, there's a backstory there where he was probably kicked out of where he was before and reset up
Mhm.
shop in San Francisco to sort of bilk and trick other people. Um,
Mhm.
but the idea is like, well, what if Lester Benny's, you know, power was actually authentic? What would that mean? You know,
Mhm.
what if someone who was, who comes across as a scam artist, because there's some elements that I pepper in there where we can definitely see that that Lester is looking to take advantage of people. Uh, and there he is, yeah, there he is singing with his band, which he also manages, and takes just a small 40% management fee.
Just a
Um,
small 40%.
but yeah, so I just thought, like, if you had someone of that mold, coming up across a do-gooder like Winston, I thought that would be an interesting dynamic to see how that unfolds. And
Yeah.
I don't think I have any particular source of what brought Lester together as a villain.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's always interesting to me, kind of you've talked so much about how Charlie Stickney really helped you kind of, evolve the story and progress a bit, which is great. And it's so interesting how many different ways you can do a villain, like how many different perspectives, because you could have it where Lester is completely supernatural being, but at the same time, like, by the third issue where Winston's kind of just like, this is authentic, but he himself doesn't seem to be supernatural. What in the world do I do now? It's kind of this big stump where even the reader's kind of like, well, I went through all the scenarios. I thought it was this. I thought it was this obvious answer. I thought it was this choice. Now what in the world's next? And it just keeps me, it makes me want to keep reading it, because I'm like, well, now I'm on the same page as Winston. I'm actually with the protagonist in their shoes. Like, what the heck do I do?
Right. Well, the next issue after the one you've read, things get a little bit more off the hinges,
Ooh.
and then the fifth issue, you'll get your answer.
Yes. And so is this a 5-issue series?
It's a 5-issue series of the first story arc. So right now, there's Scout is doing the first 5 issues.
Mhm.
I haven't created anything beyond that yet. I have some ideas and some concepts that I'd like to explore.
Mhm.
But I wanted to see, I guess, if there's any interest in doing that, with these first
Yeah.
5 issues, to see if there's people out there that are interested and would embrace this story. So be happy to tell where it goes next, with an audience. So that would be cool if that happens.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one thing I really love is Winston as a character, because he is quirky but in a very endearing way. And even if sometimes he seems almost like too good, if that makes sense for me, I'm like, wow, he's so pure and all of that, which it makes sense once you find out he's literally from heaven.
Yeah.
But it's still, I still wanted to walk with him every second of each issue, once we got to him, because I was just like, man, like, even when he's going through all this nonsense and he's seeing these terrible things, he isn't like a lot of the protagonists I'm seeing in a lot of comics lately, where he's rash, he's kind of to the point, he's direct, he'll be kind of brutal at first. He's just like, he's genuinely just trying to figure out what's going on and doing the right thing. And he's also not somebody that's like, let me follow all the rules at all times. He follows the rules as he can, but if he needs to jump around just to figure out the right thing, he just does it, so I really appreciate how you've written his characterization. I think it's a protagonist that I personally, as a reader, don't get to see a lot anymore.
Well, you definitely picked up on a very intuitive level of who Winston is. I mean, that is spot on. Who he is. His character is, he's a well-meaning person, and he's very careful and deliberate because he's an accountant, right? He's
Yep.
not a rash person, and he believes in the system in which he's involved in. He believes in the sort of like the heavenly bureaucracy. It's just that when he comes up against it for the first time, he's taken aback, and it sort of is his journey of like, dealing with sort of like an unraveling revelation of what's really going on behind the scenes in heaven. And so
Mhm.
there's a bigger mystery happening that Winston sort of finds himself enmeshed in. And
Yeah.
and speaking of Charlie, he made a comment after I'd written everything. He made a comment that was very on the point, that he viewed Winston sort of as a Dale Cooper character from Twin Peaks. So
Mhm.
any Twin Peaks fans out there may pick up on that. That basically you have a character that is that relies on his intuition and is just a good person through and through, but he's put into a very uh, devious and nasty world, and that's sort of in Twin Peaks is sort of the appeal, is to see how this good
Mhm.
person operates around very bad people, and that in a
Yeah.
way is very relevant and present in Miracle Kingdom,
Yeah. And honest
unintendedly though.
well, it worked. I think intention or not, that the impact is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of characters like Nightcrawler and Steve Rogers and things like that. And even though they're different characters, those two in particular, they typically are characters I like to see in this aspect as well, where they're so good. They're such good people. They have such grounded and sound morals, but when they're around other people and bad things, bad people, bad situations, it's interesting to see whether those morals hold up or not. Even characters like Wonder Woman, where like I loved Wonder Woman Dead Earth, which was a AU DC Black Label book,
Okay.
where it really tests her limits, and Wonder Woman Evolution was another good one. But to my point there is that I think that's what sticks the landing for me, is that I personally love those characters, and you've done such a great job. So anybody else, whether it's Twin Peaks or Marvel or DC characters, wherever you love, if you really like seeing really morally sound and authentic and lovely characters be kind of challenged in good ways, like this is a great way to see that again, and to have a brand new character to love out of it.
Yeah, he will be tested. He wins and it's sort of his faith in the system, which is sort of like the underpinning theme of this, is the faith in the system will be tested.
Mm-hmm.
If actually it's now that you have this page up, are you able to increase and highlight one of the panels, the one with the magazine down the bottom, the
Mm-hmm.
close up of the magazine? Are you able to expand on that in the PDF at all by chance? Because that sort of captures a lot of the tone of this of the comic, and the tone of Lester, who's on a magazine called Ministry Watch Monthly, which reviewed his church. And the little tagline there is, "This church does what the Vatican can't."
Yep.
So, which is actually, for retro video game fans, will know that that's a play on the old Sega tagline.
Oh wow! I
Uh,
would have caught that. I didn't play enough
yeah,
Sega, I guess.
Sega does what Nintendo, or I think it's, or maybe it's a Nintendo line, but anyways, it's yeah, what Nintendo can't. I have to revisit where I borrowed that from, but anyways, you know, video game fans may catch on, like retro video game fans may catch on to the reference there, but that's the tongue-in-cheek playfulness of this story, is that uh, that the villain here is on the cover of a magazine where he got reviewed for his miracles. So it's and he got 5 gold crosses, which is exceptional. An exceptional review.
I love the play on words there. This church does what the Vatican can't. And stuff like that's always funny, especially with like religious or spiritual things, to me, because it's like you're invalidating someone that you're supposed to really like, see in the best light possible, or that's supposed to be like, another word of God, essentially, because you think this person might be more of a word of God, I guess. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, yeah, you know, it's a very delicate line in creating this because I didn't want it to be a very religious story because it's not. It's supposed to be basically a mystery in heaven. That's where I kind of
Uh-huh.
wanted to focus it. You know, I didn't want it to be dogmatic or anything like that. I wanted to just be,
Mhm.
um, you know, obviously a testing a person's faith in a system, but
Yeah.
not necessarily testing it in any sort of religious capacity, but just more in a like are we doing the right thing, and what does doing the right thing really cost? That's
Yeah.
ultimately sort of the direction I wanted to take the story.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but hats off also to an incredible creative team. Alonso Molina, who drew this page, he's a fantastic talent out of Peru. And then the colorist is Iksan Ansori, who hails from Indonesia. And then the masterful lettering of Lucas Gattoni, who's
Yes.
very well known to the neighborhood here because he has a lot of great indie comics out there, and also his new DC run of Blue Beetle is terrific. So uh,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
fortunate
Lucas is
to
great.
assemble this team and to create just a really cool look to it. And yeah, I mean, I love the style of Alonso's penciling and inks, and everyone else is just top notch. So I'm thrilled that I was able to have these guys come on board.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought them up because, the creative team, like you say, writing the scripts and stuff, that doesn't bring a comic to life. The comic is very much a visual medium. And I really love the art for this series. I think in particular Alonzo's like pencils and inks like really are endearing. I think they help, kind of add to the atmosphere around following Winston around as essentially the main protagonist. Um I think, Alonzo's art really complements him as the main lead, which is really great. And then, the colors are just, I mean, it adds that extra light, I think. For lack of a better way of putting it, with just, the fact that, he is from heaven and he's trying to figure out what the world's going on. I'm interested to see how the colors go with the next issue or two in terms of like if he's going through more challenges and we see things get a little more chaotic. Like I wonder if the coloring's going to get any darker or things like that at times to kind of match that for like the next issue or so.
Well, it's funny you say that because yeah, I mean, I'm not sure necessarily the colors veer in this set of the story arc, but the next story arc, which I haven't done yet, was going to take into sort of more of a chaotic approach because this first story, everything is in orderly. Heaven is in a very orderly place. In fact, Alonso very deliberately chose to have a very clean look to the page. He wanted to, which helps sort of highlight the humor of the issue,
Yeah.
but also just to keep everything sort of just orderly. And the panels are very there's not a lot of like out of left field stuff in this first arc. And then later on, if we do continue the story, my intention is to get more visually chaotic as as the order of heaven sort of you know comes undone, to sort of reveal that simultaneously in the visual styling of the comic itself.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, Lucas Catoni, I think, did win in our neighborlies awards last year, did win voted by neighbors the letter of the year award. So like you got the neighborhood's letter of the year on your book. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty freaking cool. Like a lot of people can't say that.
Yeah, and I relied a lot on his guidance because this is, I'm a rookie. I'm such a rookie. This is not only just my first comic book that's getting made, it's the first comic book I ever wrote.
Mhm.
So I really needed like someone out there with Lucas's experience to sort of give me some of the technical aspects, to sort of be
Mhm.
patient with me and help usher this thing on the page. And he did a marvelous job, both as being a kind mentor and a skilled talent. So it's very fortunate to have him. And then like after this was all done, and to come and find your show and the neighborlies, which I followed and watched and voted,
Oh, thank
was
you.
it was very satisfying to see someone from my team Lucas especially to get recognized in that way. So that's very
Hey,
cool.
you never know, Michael. It might be your time this year, next year, whenever that is. Like the neighborlies are going to be here for a while.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll certainly cheerlead. That's for sure.
Hey, you
I'll
never know when you'll be nominated. That was what's so fun for me about those awards is that like I didn't do the nominations, I didn't do the voting. It was literally all the neighbors, creators, fans alike.
Mhm.
And most of the stuff that was nominated, rather outside the specific Marvel or DC categories that were there was indie stuff, and there are creators that I don't think even expected to get nominated. So that's why I'm just so excited for this year because it's like everybody has all year to prepare. Everybody knows the neighborlies are coming. Get your best campaign books out there. No, I'm kidding, but
Right. Well, it could be good timing because I think the way the Scout is releasing these, there will be some spacing between the first and second issue. I think the second issue is going to hit the stores in June and then July for the third issue. And I'm not sure about the fourth and fifth. So it'd be probably right around the end of the year. So it'll be of top of mind for next year's Neighborlies. And the Neighborlies were in December, was it?
December, January, yeah,
December and January. Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
the story could be wrapping up just in time as people think about voting on stuff. So maybe that's good timing. We'll see.
I
Just
am
to
just
have
so excited.
people recognize and read and enjoy this as you did, which this is great talking to you about this because you read it, you got it, you kind of understood what I'm trying to convey, and which is like yeah, you're the first show I've done to actually with someone who's read
Woo!
my stuff, so I appreciate that. It's thrilling. Um,
Yeah. No, that's what I'm
and
here for. Like, that's why I like to read stuff beforehand, not only so I know what the world I'm talking about, but also because then I get to be excited with you. Like if I come to a show I'm not excited, then like it's probably clear I didn't do my homework. And that's the whole point is to be excited about comics and excited about people like you, like joining us in the comic world and how crazy and hectic but fun it is. Like, it's a great time.
yeah, it's been a very rewarding experience. It's been a lot of work. Um,
Mhm.
and but to have an idea sort of just in the back of your mind hovering while you're doing your day job, and then sort of just to follow through with it, and come up, find some great talents to work with and to get into that collaborative creative process. There's nothing better, and to have a publisher like Scout take a risk on something that's not a superhero story, that's very
Mhm.
different and unique in its own right. To have them back me up on it, it's been very rewarding. So a lot of work,
Yeah.
and definitely whatever happens next, it's been well worth it.
Yeah. It comics are so much work. I don't think people realize that until they do them. Like even now I can say that, but I've never actually made a comic. So if I ever make one, I'm probably going to be crying, be like, they were all right. um but I'm so glad it's been rewarding at least because I think that makes the hard work worthwhile. And again, the fact that this is your first comic you've written and it's already gotten picked up by Scout and it's coming out, like that speaks so much to you as a creator, as a writer, as a person. So like huge congrats again. I know everybody's excited to read Miracle Kingdom because if you aren't, I will make sure you're excited. um
Oh, thank you.
yeah, but this is supposed to come out at the end of March, I believe. Scout moved the date to like March 22nd, possibly the 29th. Anything else you want people to know about, Miracle Kingdom?
Well, it's a very fun tongue-in-cheek story that if you like something that's slightly irreverent and is just a very fun story to create, and very cool mystery, and I really look forward to people exploring it and unraveling the layers to it and finding out about what it's all about themselves. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you really sort of said everything I could say to sort of whet their appetites and see if that's something that they would like to get into. So it's the mystery out there waiting for a readership. So that would be great if people get into it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you said better than I did. I think this is, a type of story that we're not getting as much of lately in comics, which is totally fine. There's so much great stuff, but I feel like there's been kind of a transition into more of the like horror stuff lately, which
Hmm.
is really cool. Like, and I've read quite a few of the horror stuff in comics, because I can't watch horror films. I'm a baby. Like jump scares, can't do them. But in a comic book, I'm okay. I can handle them
Really?
there.
Oh, well, no, I love comic stories. I love horror stories. I love horror movies. In
Mhm.
fact, when I was originally conceiving this story, I always imagined it would be part of an anthology of horror, sort of
Oh
as like
wow.
the comic relief in the middle. Um,
Mm.
I grew up reading EC comics, the horror Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and
Yeah.
Haunt of Fear. And every so often, they would have a story in there, humorous story that was
Mhm.
very self-aware and breaks the fourth wall. And I
Mhm.
always thought, like when I was conceiving a story idea, I was thinking, oh, I know Tales from the Crypt, and maybe I would write a Tales from the Crypt themed story. And then I came up with the this what at the time I called Heaven's Accountant, and I was like,
Mhm.
maybe that could fit in, like, in an anthology of horror, to be like sort of the comic relief for a moment, even though
Mhm.
it's not a horror, and it would probably totally wouldn't work in today's anthologies. But the seed of the idea came from out of thinking about horror anthologies. So
That's cool. I mean, I could definitely see how it could be slightly tweaked and reworked, just to fit in that anthology mindset. Like even if you had like somebody did a horror anthology and they won like some comic relief in between, but still had a little bit edge of the creepy, you could do a like a story from the universe of Miracle Kingdom and throw it in there. I think that would be really cool. Not
yeah,
that you have to grow your whole universe. I know so many people are growing universes and that can stress people out, but I think that could definitely work. There's definitely aspects of this world that are actually really creepy if you delve into them in that lens, but you can still keep that comedy so that you have a balance there. So that's awesome. Like I wouldn't have thought of that, Michael, but you saying that now, I'm like, that could work in a weird way. Like I would have never
yeah.
thought, but I feel like that's the best way to do comics is when you find weird ways to make things work that in any other case would never work.
Right, for sure. Like if I ever do a Kickstarter, it would probably be a comic about a Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a cursed Kickstarter where the people that donate are dying, and then to see if people would donate to a comic about a Kickstarter where that's cursed. But yeah, I like out there wacky ideas and putting them together and finding unexpected results and seeing if it would gel as a story.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised I haven't seen a Kickstarter like that yet. So you might want to trademark the idea, Michael, because somebody's going to come for that one.
Yeah, we can call it stretch goal or something. I don't know, or
Ooh.
I don't
You
know.
see?
I'd have to come up with an idea that it gives it sort of like a horror or a slasher tone to it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would do something like that. Just as almost as a social experiment to see if people would engage in a Kickstarter that is cursed.
I think a lot of people would. That's what's funny is a lot of times too the quirkiest Kickstarters are the ones that I see do the best because they lean into the fun and fans really
Yeah,
love that stuff. They like the quirky, they like the fun. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just so excited because I can already tell you've got so many ideas for the future. And Miracle Kingdom is only the start. I really hope it continues. I think it's got a perfect place with Scout, especially since you like the quirky stuff. Scout is the place to be for that stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're the ones that published Mullet Cop, which drove
yeah,
me bonkers, but everybody loves Mullet Cop, which means it's doing what's supposed to do.
yeah. And Mr. Easta, which is their new title right
Mm.
now, about like a rabbit that's also an assassin. It's
I love that.
wild in premise and visual style. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But
I
I think
love
it's
it.
Kit Wallace that writes
Yep,
and draws that.
I love
Yeah.
Kit Wallace. I'll need to take a look at that because I've seen Kit. I have some Kit Wallace's work with like a Source Point Press, I think. Um, So Kit's fantastic. So I'd be really excited to check that out. But either way, those you guys watch this later, be sure to check out Miracle Kingdom. Scout Comics did push a date back, unfortunately, but we know delays happen. So it should be out into March. If you're
Yeah.
interested in getting it, call your local comic shop. Ask them if they can still hold a copy from you. I don't know if FOC's passed yet or not. And they can probably check out Scout Comics site too. I'm sure there'll be some copies there, which is exciting. Michael, is there any chance you can plug where we can find you?
Oh
social
yeah,
media and such, not in real life.
I'm on the internet. I'm on Twitter at miracle_kingdom. That kingdom is spelled with a zero, so it's miracle_KINGD0M. And on Instagram, I am at miracle_kingdom_comic. Miracle_kingdom_comic.
Sweet. That's not too bad. Just a couple of underscores we gotta remember, but it's fine, y'all. I know most of us were alive during the underscore days. It's okay. We can handle it.
Yeah.
But
Actually,
either
there is
way,
one other thing I do want to share with
yeah.
you. Something that I put a lot of work into and did really quick. When I was promoting this comic to stores, I wasn't sure if I should send like pamphlets or flyers, but I ended up creating scratch tickets.
Oh
And
wow.
these are actually let me see if I can focus it there. A scratch
Oh
ticket.
yeah, I
When
see
I
it. With all the information.
and then on the back it was Lester's daily sermons. So you could scratch off what he was saying, and it would reveal a funny saying like, "Oh, you got to pray harder than that, Bob," or it would say like, support indie comics. But also, I had some winners in there. I gave out
Ooh.
Apple gift cards and Amazon gift cards and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's
uh,
awesome.
yeah,
That's a
it
lot
was
of
a
fun.
fun, unique promotion that I thought might get people's interest. So
Yeah. I would love to see more things like that. Just little more like engaging, interactive ways to promote. And I know it's so hard because a lot, especially in comics, there's so much self-promotion that everybody has to do. But that was so clever of you. You came up with that yourself and found a printer and everything.
no, I did it all myself. I printed it at home with my inkjet, and I found out on Amazon you can buy these like little scratch off silver things. So all I did is I
Mhm.
printed the answer and then just applied a sticker on top of it that you can actually scratch off. So
That's so
um,
cool.
yeah, and then I was calling stores and asking them what they prefer for promotions, and it literally just popped in my head. I said, "Has anyone ever sent you a scratch ticket?" And the person at the store says, "No, but that's kind of a cool idea."
Mhm.
So, and then, FOC was approaching. So I spent the next 3 days scrambling around, printing these up and creating them. So, uh,
That's so clever. I think that'd be really fun to do, especially like if you ever decide to do like a signing in stores or something, and you bring those little scratch cards that could, really get, people to the table more because sometimes that's hard too, is a lot of us fans get nervous coming up to tables and looking at things. So it's like just scratch this and look at the book. It's fine.
well, I did create a special set. I changed some of the information on it for, to introduce me as a writer for signing events. And then, rather than Apple cards and gift cards and stuff like that, because that was expensive, I
Mhm.
actually went with just giving out a free comic. So,
Nice.
maybe one in every 10 or 11 or so. If you scratch it off, I could give you a free comic right off the table.
That's awesome. I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I kind of want to see more people do stuff like that. Especially free comic, because that's the hard thing too with comics is obviously we want to make money, but the really only way to get them out there sometimes is to just say, "Hey, read this. Tell your friends about it if you like it." Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy to have people, discover this title. So, whichever way they get it in their hands and enjoy it, I'm cool with.
awesome. Well, thank you again, Michael, for coming on the show. Congrats on not only your debut comic, first published by Scout, by a bigger publisher, but your first comic you've written. Like, that is just so cool. So a huge congrats. Everybody watching this, be sure to check it out. I'll make sure to have links to Michael's social media in the description below and a link to Miracle Kingdom on Scout's site, Previews World, wherever it is. I'll make sure you can find a way to get to it. And otherwise, be sure to follow Michael. Be sure to support Miracle Kingdom and Scout Comics. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel here. All that really cheesy but super important stuff that helps support comics, support us, and help us all grow. But otherwise, thanks, nerdy neighbors. We'll see you next time in the nerdy neighborhood.